Story 1. Browning or caramelizing makes food taste delicious. My daughter was watching a British cooking show, and they often said, "Brown food tastes good." It's true. Story 2. Patience. Let the pan warm up. Let the oven reach the correct temperature. Wait for that sear before flipping your steak, tortilla, or whatever you are cooking. Do not rush it. Story 3. Read salt, fat, acid, heat. It is the theory of how to make food delicious. Story 4. Peanut butter on both sides of the sandwich prevents the jelly from soaking into the bread. Story 5. Hotter does not mean faster. It just means more burnt. Story 6. Adding a squeeze of lemon or vinegar at the end does not make it taste sour. It just makes all the flavors pop. Story 7. Mise en place means to have everything in place, ready to go. Have your ingredients chopped, measured, and utensils out and ready, pan hot and water boiling. Story 8. Add a few pinches of espresso powder to any dessert containing chocolate. It will make the chocolate taste richer, and you will not taste the espresso. It is my secret ingredient in my chocolate chip cookies. Story 9. You would be absolutely amazed at the number of things that reheat perfectly in the microwave when wrapped in a wet paper towel. Story 10. Adding a dash of balsamic vinegar to anything tomato-based gives that extra tangy zing. Story 11. Do not interfere with it. Let the cooking surface do the work. You do not need to flip your burger or steak multiple times. As the younger generation says these days, let them cook. Also, cook foods to the correct temperature, not time. Story 12. When it is time to cook, focus solely on cooking. Do not watch television, play on your phone, or do other chores. The only other activity while cooking should be cleaning up after yourself. Pay attention to your cooking using all your senses. Tasting, smelling, listening, and touching. This can be challenging, but really focus on your timing. For most meals, aim to have everything ready to plate within a minute or two after finishing. Usually, only the final pan you are cooking with remains to be cleaned. Everything else should be cleaned up along the way. Story 13. More butter. Make sure the cast iron is truly hot before you put anything in it. Story 14. Learn your oven. If a recipe says to cook at 160 degrees and your items keep coming out overcooked, understand that when a recipe says 160 degrees, your oven may be running hot. Therefore, cook it at 150 or 140 degrees instead. Learn your oven. Story 15. My most underrated cooking secret is letting food rest. Not just meat after you cook it, but even pasta sauce or soups. If you let them sit for a bit, the flavors settle in and taste much better. It is like magic with zero extra effort. Story 16. Italian sausage instead of ground beef for any Italian dish. I come from Italian ancestry. My grandmother had a great spaghetti recipe, but she always used ground beef. A friend suggested I try Italian sausage, and it was a total game changer, 10 times better. I suggested the change to my family, and they responded with, "That's not how Nana did it." As far as I know, they're still using flavorless ground beef. Their loss. Story 17. Butter. It might not be the healthiest, but if you want your food to have that rich French taste, add a generous amount of butter to whatever you are cooking. Story 18. My favorite secret ingredient is Dijon mustard. I add it to macaroni and cheese, salads, pork dishes, meatloaf, and more. Story 19. Hear me out. Replace some of the milk in macaroni and cheese with sour cream and onion dip. Story 20. A small splash of soy sauce can add roasty flavors to a lot of non-Asian dishes. Story 21. Monosodium glutamate. Use it. It's fine. It will not hurt you, and you need much less salt if you use it. Chili crisp is another option. Italian or Chinese. They are both amazing. Last point. You cannot overcome bad ingredients, which is different from cheap ingredients. This mainly applies to trying to substitute things. For example, buy good butter if you can. Coffee is the same. If you spend enough to get good quality, you will not regret it. If you go cheap, you will dislike it and feel you wasted money. Story 22. Salt your pasta water. Salt it so it tastes as salty as the sea. After the pasta is cooked, Put about 2 to 3 tablespoons of pasta water into your sauce. It acts as an emulsifier. Story 23. Season your dish in layers. Season again at each major step. Smoked Maldon sea salt is excellent. Story 24. Using cold brew or even just room temperature coffee instead of water in brownie mix instructions. Story 25. Smoked spicy paprika. Deviled eggs. Dry rub. Cilantro lime rice. Roasted vegetables. Yes. Story 26. Salt is not just about taste. Salt pulls out moisture and helps break down cells. Salt should be one of the first things you add to almost anything you cook. Story 27. Use baking soda to tenderize inexpensive cuts of meat so they taste like higher-priced cuts. Story 28. Season anything you are about to cook before you cook it. Then, when you finish preparing the dish, taste it and adjust the seasoning. Also, if your recipe calls for cooking everything in one pot, sear your meat separately, then the vegetables, and then combine. The juices from the meat will season the vegetables, adding layers of flavor. Story 29. Double the amount of onions and garlic a recipe suggests. Onions and garlic are aromatics. Other aromatics are carrots, celery, and herbs like bay leaves and rosemary. These make a huge difference in the flavor of your food. If it tastes like something is missing but you cannot work out what, it is probably acid. Add some lemon juice or vinegar. Story 30. Cooking extra so I can freeze a portion in deli containers labeled because everything looks the same when frozen. In any stew, I add sliced mushrooms, even if it is not in the recipe. Story 31. Butter or olive oil, salt, pepper, and garlic for meats and vegetables. Roasted vegetables are better than steamed every time, with a few exceptions. Most dishes are improved with cheese. Story 32. No secret but making pan sauces to glaze over your food when you are done. Simple. Cook your proteins in a stainless steel, carbon steel, or cast iron pan and let it sear properly for a good browning effect. Remove from the pan. Then, to deglaze the fond, use your choice of vegetables and their moisture to release the flavorful fond bits. Scallions and a small amount of garlic work well. Let them become aromatic without burning the garlic. Add white or red wine or water and a little stock to release the rest of the fond. Let it evaporate a bit. Add a dab of butter for extra flavor, even some Dijon mustard, etc. Add that on top of whatever you are cooking, and everyone will think you are a chef. Story 33. For me, when I think the food has enough salt, I add more because I always put in too little salt. Story 34. Even if you are following a recipe, do not be afraid to improvise, especially with seasoning, to suit your own taste. Try to balance your sweet, sour, salty, and spicy flavors. Story 35. I use leeks and scallions instead of onions. They cause less crying and provide lighter flavors. Story 36. A spot of sherry really elevates chicken-based soups and dishes like pot pie. I also always put Worcestershire sauce in beef dishes. Story 37. Learn how to use your knives properly. You will not need all those overpriced contraptions. Story 38. This chicken breast recipe is a game changer. It is moist like restaurant style, soft and tender. Story 39. A little butter, lemon, and sugar make most things better. Story 40. Food continues to cook after it is removed from the heat, so take the vegetables off a little early, while they still have some crunch to avoid mushy vegetables. For the best fish, cook it barely, about 6 minutes maximum for a fillet. Story 41. Leave the scrambled eggs a little wet and take them off the heat to stir and fold. They won't be dry and will taste great. Story 42. Putting a tiny bit of salt in desserts makes the sweetness pop much more. Story 43. Turn up the sound. I don't care if it is music, a podcast, or bird whistling. I cannot cook in silence. Story 44. A little vinegar goes in everything. Just a splash will alter whatever you are cooking 99% of the time for the better. I thought I was losing it at first, but now I know it is just a well-kept secret. Story 45. Use a cooking thermometer to prevent overcooking your meat. Story 46. High glutamate foods make everything taste better. Hard cheese, tomatoes, soy sauce, fermented proteins, fish sauce, beans, natto. Story 47. Be a little heavy-handed with the vanilla when baking. For me, more vanilla just gives it that extra cozy feeling. Story 48. Make sure you have all your preparation work done before you start cooking. Story 49. Follow a recipe and it will almost never fail. Maybe this is not new for others, but growing up with a mother who just whips things together and still does, it is surprising that I realized following a recipe actually means tasty food. Story 50. Add a little honey to your cookie recipes. It makes the dough a bit softer and chewier. Also, add some Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal to your oatmeal cookie batter. Just try it and thank me later. Story 51. Use chicken bouillon powder for chicken dishes and beef bouillon powder for beef dishes instead of salt. You can make your own sausage by seasoning ground meat yourself. Dry Italian salad dressing mix makes delicious homemade Italian sausage, and there is a great recipe for homemade breakfast sausage on All Recipes. Use unsalted broth instead of water in pre-seasoned dishes like rice-a-roni, seasoned couscous, hamburger helper, or ramen noodles. It adds flavor without making the food too salty. For instant mashed potatoes, substitute the same amount of milk for water and the same amount of heavy whipping cream for milk, then add extra butter and salt. To make a box cake mix taste like it is made from scratch, substitute the same amount of melted butter for oil and milk for water. For chocolate cake, use chocolate milk. For strawberry cake, use strawberry-flavored milk. For lemon cake, use lemonade. Make a simple syrup in the same flavor as the cake and pour it evenly over the cake when you remove it from the oven. Then let the cake cool completely to allow it to soak up the syrup. You can make an upside-down cake using any fruit. A personal favorite is white chocolate raspberry upside-down cake. Mix instant chocolate pudding mix using chocolate milk. Story 52. Adding a pinch of cocoa powder to any tomato-based sauce helps balance the flavor. I read about this technique and thought it sounded unlikely, but I tried it and found that it makes a significant difference in enhancing the overall flavor. However, be careful not to add too much. Story 53. If a recipe asks for a yellow or white onion and you are going to sauté or caramelize it, use a sweet onion instead. Story 54. Soaking pasta overnight in a bowl of water and then cooking it for 5 minutes the next day. Story 55. When making a roux, first brown the flour in a dry skillet, then add the oil. This adds a delightful nutty flavor. Story 56. Fresh ginger. Not the dry or jarred kind. It goes without saying, fresh garlic. Story 57. Brown or Dijon mustard and a dash of Worcestershire sauce will improve almost every savory food. Story 58. Use vermouth instead of wine. Put it in everything as it improves flavor immediately. Story 59. Salt that steak as much as you think it needs and then double it. The correct amount of salt is what makes a great steak besides quality meat. Story 60. Only use pepper when you are ready to serve the dish. Buy high-quality whole peppercorns and a good grinder. Story 61. A few tips about good barbecue at home. Pellet smokers are amazing for long cooks and consistently produce excellent barbecue. Don't listen to the critics. Wood fire smokers require constant attention, like tending to a locomotive on a hot summer day. It's exhausting. Learn the snake method for using charcoal and wood in a kettle grill. It is labor-intensive, but the results are great and you get a rewarding sense of accomplishment. Don't pay for rubs. You can make them yourself with ingredients from your spice cabinet, and it won't make a noticeable difference. You don't need to trim a Packers cut brisket. Start it 24 hours before you plan to eat and cook it very slowly. It will be the best barbecue your friends and family have ever eaten. If you're spritzing, all you need is water. I have tried everything else, and none of it makes a difference. Just use water. And the most important tip of all, you can make amazing, better than most restaurants' quality barbecue in your own backyard. It's not hard. I can teach you and guide you through it. Story 62. When boiling green beans, add a teaspoon of sugar to the water. This allows them to cook to tenderness about 6 minutes, but stay a bright green. I season them one way after draining, tossed with toasted sesame oil, salt, and finely minced fresh garlic to taste. Story 63. Asparagus with olive oil, honey, and garlic cooked in an air fryer for 8 minutes. Story 64. Learn to cook using stainless steel. You will thank me in a year. Story 65. Cooking on stainless steel is great if you let it heat properly. Do the water test. Put a drop of water on the pan, and if it evaporates, it is not ready. If it beads up and moves across the pan, you are all set. Do not cook on high heat. Story 66. Using a stainless steel pan, preheat on medium to medium-high. Toss in a couple of drops of water. When the water drops roll around like little balls, the pan is ready. Remove the pan from the heat, add some oil and butter, and then start cooking. You can even cook eggs in stainless steel. To clean stainless steel, pretend you are making gravy. Pour enough water to cover the bottom of the pan, heat until hot or boiling, and then scrape the pan with your spatula. Use paper towels to absorb and wipe the pan clean. Do not put the residue down the drain. Then wash the pan as usual. No more scouring or harsh chemicals. Took me years to learn these things, but I finally did. Story 67. If your food is bland, the answer is salt like 90% of the time. Story 68. Fresh herbs and spices instead of the pre-ground items make a huge difference. At the very least, discard the ground pepper and get a quality peppercorn blend along with a grinder. Story 69. Salt, fat, acid, heat. Experiment with all of these in various ways to improve your food. Add lime or vinegar to onions and black beans. Finish vegetables with extra butter. Salt meat well before cooking. Allow a crust to develop on your meat before flipping. Story 70. Dry brine your steaks. It is much better than adding salt right before cooking. Story 71. If the recipe calls for vanilla, use twice the amount. If it calls for oil, use melted butter. Story 72. In baking, try replacing vanilla extract with almond extract. I did this with sugar cookies, and my God, what a difference it made. I imagine it could do the same with many other desserts. Story 73. 10-minute garlic rule. Smash, chop, or mince your garlic. Then set it aside and prepare other vegetables or ingredients for 10 to 12 minutes before heating. When you crush or cut garlic, you break cell walls and allow two parts to combine and react. This forms allicin, garlic's famous healthy compound. It promotes cardiovascular health, is antimicrobial, and acts as an antioxidant by capturing free radicals. The more you break up and crush the garlic, the more allicin can be produced. However, it takes time for these parts to combine and create allicin, and the compounds can be destroyed by heat before they combine. By chopping and waiting 10 minutes, you allow a substantial amount of allicin to form, which is heat stable. Allicin also enhances garlic's flavor. It is a sulfurous compound responsible for its distinctive taste. Story 74. Okay, wait. Seriously, if you are not using it, you are missing out. Story 75. You can always add salt later, but you cannot remove it once added. Therefore, start with a small amount. Story 76. Plain Greek yogurt tastes and acts exactly like sour cream, but it has less fat and more protein. Story 77. When making pancakes, add the leavening agents at the very last minute. That way, they stay as light and fluffy as possible. Story 78. Cooking rice. Boil 2 cups of water. Add 1 cup of rice. Cover the pot. Turn off the burner but leave the pot on it. Stir the rice after about 30 seconds, then again 30 seconds later. The rice will be ready in about 20 minutes. Discard your rice cooker and reclaim the space. Story 79. Continually taste as you build the recipe. Use ground white pepper if you have children. Always use the best or freshest ingredients you can. Garlic and onion powders are your friends. Story 80. To make anything more savory, substitute chicken broth for water. Story 81. You only have to pay for the groceries in your cart, but not the ones in your pockets. With this simple hack, you will improve the quality of your ingredients and your life. Story 82. I grew up thinking I was immune to the whole onions make you cry thing. Then I cut one that had been left on the counter and realized it was just because my mom always kept them in the refrigerator. It turns out they do not release the chemical that burns our eyes when they are cold. Story 83. Adding a splash of fish sauce to any dish prepared with beef or lamb mince will improve the flavor. Bolognese, chili, or any recipe will benefit from it. It does not taste fishy but brings out a wonderful savory, umami flavor. Try it once and you will never stop. Story 84. Reheat leftover pizza in a non-stick pan. I just cut it to fit and place it in the pan on medium heat. It is done when the top starts to look shiny. I learned this from the original Queer Eye. It also works great for leftover French fries or delivery fries that never come hot and crispy. You do not need oil in the pan as it is already in the food. Story 85. Reverse smoking and searing meats such as steaks and fish. Adding sugar to tomato-based pasta sauces. Story 86. When making soups from scratch, substitute 1/4 cup of white wine for water, broth, or stock. Add some carrots for sweetness to balance the acidity of tomatoes. Story 87. A pinch of dill seed in any soup or stew will brighten it considerably. Story 88. Seasonings are a must. Salt items separately. For example, if you are making chicken wings and potatoes, salt the wings separately from the potatoes on both sides. Then add whatever seasonings you like. Use oil. Oils are essential in cooking. I do not believe you can make a fat or oil-free dish and enjoy it. I am not saying it is impossible, but I just do not believe it. Knowing how to prepare meats of any kind is very important. Do not serve chicken or pork undercooked or steak overcooked. The first can cause food poisoning, and the second will taste unpleasant. Story 89. Asiago cheese, ricotta cheese, minced mushrooms, chopped spinach, garlic, and salt added to any meat will make it better. Stuff chicken with it, coat beef, or stuff pork chops. It doesn't matter. If you cook it slowly, it will be incredibly flavorful. Sometimes I mince broccoli into it as well. Stuff it in chicken, bake the chicken, then put it over pesto Alfredo penne, and you have yourself a game-changing meal. Story 90. Not a secret, but pounding chicken breasts to the same thickness. Story 91. That acidity is usually what is missing when people say it needs more salt. Story 92. If something seems to be missing when you sample and taste your meal, add a tiny bit of vinegar. Story 93. I meal prep pork chops and ground beef patties, and neither needs to be thawed before cooking. This way, I do not have to worry if I forget to take meat from the freezer for meals. Story 94. Every dish utilizes all our taste buds. Sourness is an underestimated flavor in seasoning. Salt and vinegar can take a sweet recipe from good to exceptional. The same applies to sugar or honey in savory dishes. Just because a flavor is not dominant does not mean a hint of it is bad. Quite the opposite. Story 95. A tablespoon of Marmite or Vegemite in beef or pork gravy makes the gravy very flavorful. You can use monosodium glutamate, but the Marmite or Vegemite enhances the taste significantly. Story 96. Leftover pizza can be heated in a pan with a bit of water and is as good as if it were just delivered to you. Story 97. If a recipe calls for garlic, use 2 or 3 times the recommended amount. Story 98. Take those scrambled eggs off the heat while they still look slightly uncooked. They will continue to cook during the final transfer from pan to plate. Now you have perfect, glossy, soft scrambled eggs. For a fancy touch, add a dollop of coarse grain mustard. Serve with wholemeal toast and salted butter. Story 99. Prosciutto-wrapped asparagus sounds fancy, is easy to make, and tastes similar to bacon-wrapped asparagus. You can cook that and serve it with a chicken breast and microwavable rice, presenting it as a decent meal. Story 100. More of a baking secret. If I am baking anything with chocolate, cinnamon, or other warm spices, I always add some cayenne. It makes the flavors pop in a fantastic way. Story 101. A thick piece of wood, such as a cutting board, will pause a hot pan. Turning a burner off can still result in burning the food if you don't time it perfectly. Setting the pan on a burner that is already off will rapidly draw heat out of the pan, cooling it faster than intended. The block of wood strikes the perfect balance, allowing you to set your almost too hot pan on it and have it stay at the right temperature for minutes. This makes scrambled eggs cooked quickly and perfect, medium rare steaks essentially fail-proof. This is not just based on my cooking experience. I have tested it repeatedly with various pans, heat sources, and an infrared thermometer. Story 102. Coriander powder and black pepper are essential, especially for Indian cuisine. Never forget the magic of coconut, whether milk or tender. Story 103. When you are using flour for thickening, use your nose to determine when it is time to add liquid. If you smell flour, it is not cooked yet, so keep stirring. Also, after adding the liquid, if it is not as thick as you like, keep cooking. It will continue to thicken. Story 104. Salt your tomatoes and eggplants and let the water come out before you put them in a salad or cook them. Story 105. Unsweetened cocoa is not just for baking. Braised ribs and chili are greatly enhanced by it. Story 106. Everyone needs to start dry brining their chicken, even if only for an hour. Story 107. I keep a small container of citric acid crystals to use when I want a little zing in drinks, dressings, and similar recipes without the lemon or vinegar taste. Story 108. To revitalize unsliced hard breads like sourdough or baguettes, let tap water run on the crust for a split second, then put it in the oven. Fresh loaves can be sliced on day one, individually wrapped, and frozen immediately. They reheat well on the day you need them. Story 109. Scrape fish skin with a long knife following the grain of the skin to remove the water. This will prevent the skin from sticking to the grill grates. Story 110. Never use water in a recipe, even if it says to. Use chicken broth instead. Story 111. Bouillon is available in liquid or paste form. Get it in chicken, beef, and vegetable. It will save many bland dishes. When you are broke, a pack of spaghetti and some chicken bouillon will save your instant noodle-loving heart. Story 112. Using a pinch of salt in sweet dishes and sugar in savory dishes is a game changer. Story 113. Use a bigger bowl than you think you are going to need. Also, I should do that over the sink. Story 114. Substitute chicken broth for water when boiling potatoes or making rice. Also, if you are baking a box dessert, follow the instructions but replace oil with butter and water with milk. This makes it very delicious. Story 115. Coarse kosher sea salt. No other salt, in my opinion, is acceptable to cook with. Source: professional cook for 11 years. Story 116. Stop relying so much on recipes. Have a small spoon ready and taste it once in a while by taking a bit and putting it on the back of your hand, then make adjustments. Story 117. The order and timing in which you apply ingredients make a significant difference. This is especially true for hot foods with multiple types of ingredients, and even more so with baked items. Story 118. Cornstarch is one of my favorite ingredients now. Frying meat in cornstarch, also known as velveting, can make even chicken breast very juicy. Adding cornstarch to sauces makes them thicker and helps them cling better to everything, and you do not have to make a roux with it. It is also great in drinks, such as hot chocolate, to make them a bit richer and smoother. Story 119. Boil everything in broth, not water. Potatoes, rice, pasta. Story 120. Lift the pasta out of the water with tongs and finish cooking it in the pan with the sauce. Story 121. Using quality butter. We switched from cheap regular butter to Kerrygold, and let me tell you what, a 10 out of 10 difference. Story 122. It is not really a secret. I used to be against putting a little olive oil in the water when boiling pasta. Now I do it all the time. I thought the sauce I make has olive oil in it, so why would it stick less if there is a little on the pasta already? Story 123. Maggi chicken stock powder. Add a small amount during the final cooking process. It changes everything. Story 124. You can improve store-bought products by adding ingredients. I add onions, carrots, and celery sautéed on the stove to stovetop stuffing. If I am feeling lazy, I add garlic and onions to a jar of sauce. Story 125. Clean as you go. Don't let sauces dry on, and don't let splashes bake onto your oven top. The easiest thing to do when you are cooking is to take the opportunity to clean it right away. Story 126. Basic salt and black pepper is the best seasoning for cooking and grilling meat. Story 127. Cooking bacon in the oven instead of a pan on the stove. Story 128. Clean and put away as you go. It makes the whole experience much more enjoyable to be able to sit down to eat and not have a sink full of dirty dishes. Story 129. Stopped measuring spices. Found the tiny portions in recipes would not make a dent in taste. I trust the spice gods to tell me when to stop sprinkling spices. Story 130. Names are not important. Ingredients are. You don't need to follow the recipe exactly. Just don't mess up the ratios. Story 131. Use as much salt as you can without making your dish taste salty. If your dish is missing something and it is not salt, it is an acid. Add a bit of lemon juice. Story 132. No taste enhancers. Lemon juice, salt, tomatoes, chili. They will make any dish a better version of itself. Also, to some extent, fat is healthy and enhances taste. Story 133. Adding a couple of teaspoons of mango chutney to lasagna or bolognese just gives it that chef's kiss. Story 134. Get rid of your microwave. You will be fine without it. Get a good toaster oven instead. Story 135. I mix in a dollop of French onion dip when I make scrambled eggs. Story 136. Umeboshi vinegar, tamari, and white wine vinegar. Almost anything that needs to be balanced or enhanced can be fixed with one of these. Story 137. Might get downvoted for this, but a lot of things do not have to be done perfectly. The top comments both say to have patience and not to put everything on high heat. Honestly, as someone who hates cooking but everyone says I'm pretty good at it, you don't have to follow everyone's directions. For example, if you want things done fast but also want steak, slice the steak paper thin and cook it on high heat. If you don't want to spend time seasoning your steak, buy some pre-made sauce at the store and marinate it for 30 minutes. You don't even have to marinate it. Just throw the sauce directly into the pan and cook the steak in it. Yes, it won't be gourmet, but it will probably still taste good. I think people take cooking way too seriously. They say you need the best pots and pans, need to be patient and follow perfect instructions, and need to use the correct oil and temperature. I say just make cooking your own way. Who cares what others say? The only way you'll fall in love with cooking is if you do it your own way. Story 138. Season meats hours before cooking to allow the salt to be absorbed into the meat. The salt also draws in flavors from other seasonings. Even if it's just a simple salt and pepper seasoning, that's all you need. After a night shift on Sunday morning, I sprinkle salt and pepper over a steak or two, wrap them in cling film on a plate, then put them back in the refrigerator until I wake up hours later. Also, rest your meats by letting them reach room temperature by leaving them covered for an hour. This helps achieve an even temperature throughout. Story 139. Garlic powder in scrambled eggs. Chipotle Tabasco sauce everywhere. Story 140. If you use water for cooking anything, adding chicken broth gives the dish better flavor. At the end of the day, it is still basically just more salt. Story 141. Make boxed rice, such as rice-a-roni or pilaf, better by replacing half or all of the water with chicken broth. The same applies to instant mashed potatoes. For homemade mashed potatoes, add a dollop of better than bouillon to the boiling water. Story 142. Not a secret, but if you do not heavily salt your pasta water, I consider you a caveman. Story 143. Always marinate your meat one day before cooking. Use at least one sour component such as lemon, lime, or vinegar, and try additions like miso, garlic, fresh herbs, or ginger. Your meat, especially chicken breast, will be much more tender. Story 144. Add espresso powder to anything with chocolate to enhance the flavor. Story 145. When I make chicken soup from scratch, I put some lemon juice in it. I definitely recommend it. Story 146. Season throughout the cooking process with good kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. It will make whatever you are cooking taste more like how it is supposed to taste, rather than underseasoned or overseasoned. I also agree with adding a burst of citrus. I season chicken breasts with adobo, good olive oil, and a hint of lime juice overnight. The way it retained flavor and juiciness when baked at 400 degrees was incredible. Story 147. Letting food rest before eating, whether it is steak, pasta, or roasted vegetables, allows the flavors to settle and improves the taste. Story 148. Almost any recipe that calls for water, use dashi instead. Story 149. Dry brine meats in the refrigerator on a rack without covering. Overnight or longer is best, but 6 hours before cooking will still give great results. Taste the food while you are cooking and season to taste. Use low and slow settings in the microwave for better results. Story 150. When boiling crayfish, crab, or lobster, add fresh dill weed and salt. Let it soak overnight in the brine in the refrigerator, then eat cold. It is amazing. Story 151. When you sear meat, give it a hard sear. It adds a lot of flavor. Story 152. Recipe books always have you prepare vegetables first, but if you are using chicken, the first thing you should do is prepare the chicken. It needs to be seasoned as early as possible. Also, brown your minced meat. Do it in batches so as not to crowd the pan. Story 153. I do not know if it is an underrated secret, but if you put bread in a freezer, it increases its longevity. If you thaw it out after a while and toast it or microwave it, it will taste like it was freshly baked. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.